All right, welcome. I'm Nolan Dalla. We're here for another edition of an intelligent conversation. This is our ninth episode, ninth show. We've done a lot of serious, super serious topics the last couple of months. And today we're just going to let our hair down, have some fun, and talk football, sports. Hey, let's just have some fun. And it's a perfect time because this is the midpoint of the NFL season. And so I just wanted to get some guys I've known for a long time that are football fans like me. Gamblers, yes, but we're just fans as well. So my co-host, as you know, right there on the top there is Matt Lessinger, lives in the Bay Area and has his 49ers jersey on. And then Paul Harris, who is from St. Louis, originally from the East Coast in New York. And nice to have him with us. Let me give, for those of you who listen to us regularly, you know Matt Lessinger because we're either talking or arguing about something. Now that the election's over, we can probably come to a lot of agreement here. Paul Harris is a radio legend, has worked in broadcasting for more than 40 years, started in the New York market, Long Island, all over the country, heard all over the country, worked in Philadelphia, certainly in Washington, D.C. at DC 101. I used to listen to that station myself. And then he's been in St. Louis the last 20 years, recipient of many, many radio and broadcasting awards. And he's also a pretty good poker player. So, Paul, nice to have you with us as our guest here on An Intelligent Conversation.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. And since we don't have a football team here, this is the best jersey I could come up with. But thank you for taunting me with yours.
Da, 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 da. Howard David just joined us. Howard David is in the house. Howard, can you hear us, sir?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
I'm just an idiot when it comes to technology, so I went to the bullpen and got my son-in-law, who's a computer genius, and he walked me through it.
So it wasn't my fault for giving you the wrong code to type in?
No, you did nothing wrong. It's all on me.
Wow, talk about falling on the sword for the program. Thank you. Howard David has been a radio play-by-play man for several pro sports teams. The New York Jets. Brag about that, Howard. The Miami
Hey, wait a minute. Don't link me with that.
The Miami Dolphins, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, Princeton University Tigers, the voice of Princeton University. I could go on and on.
Hey.
But those of you who have listened to NFL Monday Night Football on radio years ago will remember Howard's voice, certainly, because he replaced the legendary St. Louis icon, Jack Buck. Nice to have you with us, Howard.
I appreciate it, Nolan. It's good to be with all you guys. I appreciate you being patient. Excuse me, just to let Nolan know, to you.
Oh, wow. What are we drinking, Howard?
This is Franciscan.
Okay, well, I'm about to open up mine. I hate to drink alone, although I would have anyway. Gentlemen, let's talk some football. And those of you who are joining us on Facebook Live, I'll look at some questions later and read them to our panel of fans and experts. Let's just talk about what a season it's been. Is this like anything you've ever seen with no fans in the stands? What do you guys think about that? Why don't we go around? Matt, what do you think about no fans in the stands? How has that changed watching football?
I mean, I kind of got a glimpse of what was going to happen. Like before the NFL season was like Premier League soccer. I don't know if you really follow soccer, from Europe, but not just were there no fans, but they were piping in the sound, and it was very surreal because every time a player would go down as if he was tripped, you would hear a big oh, like the fans would normally do every time one of their players went down. And it was like, oh man, they've got it pretty realistic, but there's no fans there. Like, what's really going on here? And the NFL's kind of doing something like that, right? They're piping in some noise, which I don't know if I like that. I mean, you guys can chime in on whether
they even have booing, don't they? They boo.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they have booing, based on what happens in the play, they'll pipe in a different reaction. So I mean, they're on the ball with that, but does that enhance the experience? Or in my case, like with basketball, I thought it was cool just to hear, more of what was going on from the players. So I have a sense like I'd rather just hear, more of the sound piped in from the field. But, other than that, they're trying to make it as realistic as possible, and they're doing okay. but it's just a matter of preference, I think.
If they wanted
I
to,
don't know if Nolan, I don't know if you saw this, but they have those placards in the stands with faces of people.
yeah.
The placards are booing the Jets.
Oh, I was going to say,
since you brought them up, Howard, I'm curious, one broadcaster to another. Would you be able to get through a season with this team?
wow.
You say that, and today on my podcast, I had Marty Lyons on, who's the color analyst with Bob Wischusen on Jets Radio. And I had Bob on the other day. It's when I was with the New Jersey Nets, my first year, they won 17 games. And on the road, I was doing the games solo, which made it even more difficult because they were bad. The next year, they improved to 19 wins. And I'm thinking to myself, I got to figure out a way because they're out of most games. I got to come up with a way to try to keep the audience. And so when I was on the road alone, as an example, we go to Utah, and that's when they had Stockton and Malone. And they're destroying the Nets. They got them down 30 in the third quarter. And I'm thinking, what do I do with this? I got to do something. Well, my eye catches Larry Miller, the owner of the Utah Jazz, sitting courtside. And he's got more food in front of him. So I started doing play-by-play of Larry eating. And now I'm drawing a crowd around me. The Utah Jazz fans, they get a big kick out of this. Well, long story short, a couple of days later, I walk into the Nets office we had a home game, and the president of the team stops me. He says, "You got a minute?" I go, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble." Walk down, he said, "I was listening to the broadcast. You made chicken salad out of you-know-what the other night. That was hilarious."
Yeah.
Nice.
But
And that's what...
to be fair, it's tough. So what I really did for the most of the season was I started talking about how well the other team was playing. And that's the way I got around it.
Yeah. Because you got to fill that time and you got to do something. And there, even if you went into the locker room ahead of time and had a chance to talk to these guys and get some stories to weave into the game, you're like 90 seconds into the first quarter and I'm out of stories for these guys. That they don't have any stories. They haven't done anything.
No, it's tough. I mean, I asked Bob, who calls the games. Bob succeeded me with the Jets when I got an opportunity to go to Miami and do talk down on WQM in Miami. And then shortly after that, the Dolphins approached me because they knew I had moved to Miami. But I talked to Wischusen about it the other day, and I said, I understand what you're going through, but at least you have a color commentator like Marty Lyons and you don't want to rip the team, but you don't want to be a ridiculous homer and embarrass yourself because you still got to deal with the credibility aspect of it.
Now, I have a follow-up question for Matt and Nolan. Would you rather watch the Jets play any good team? Give them the Chiefs, give them the Steelers, give them the Seahawks, or any two teams playing against each other from the NFC East?
That's a good question.
Oh, boy. Nolan?
Or the NFC least.
Yeah.
No, it's you're right. That's a bad. I mean, I remember a few years ago, Seattle won the division, the NFC West, with 7-9 record, and they made the playoffs. Obviously, I don't think anybody in the NFC East is going to win 7 games. I think the winner of the division is going to win 6, and it's probably going to be Philadelphia.
I mean, maybe just by virtue of playing the other teams in the NFC East, they might get to 7. I mean, they've already got a tie, right? So they might go like 7, 8, and 1 or something. But yeah, that's the only reason, because they've got a soft schedule.
Well, here's the wonderful thing, gentlemen, about living in Las Vegas and being a gambler. There's no such thing as a boring game. Okay?
You're right.
I don't give a shit if we're watching. What do we have on the other night? Well, the Jets and the Patriots.
That's the best game the Jets played on
that. And I made a halftime bet too, because I'd already won my 3 bets. I had to have action on the second half.
You guys, Paul and Matt, you guys know Nolan really well.
For a long time, yeah.
Nolan once laid 6-5. It was going to rain in Vegas by 4.
Yep. Nolan, what was the season totals bet on the Jets this year? A half?
6.
I don't know. That's. Hey, keep in mind, we forget They finished 7-9 last year after a 1-6 start.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed. I took the over 6 on the Jets. I'm very embarrassed.
What were
I
you
know.
thinking?
Well, what was I thinking? Like you said, they finished so well
Oh, I
last
know.
year. I mean, they were on a roll. They got my homeboy. Shout out to Ashton Davis from Santa Cruz, one of my cousin's good friends who just laid a hell of a sack onto Cam Newton this week, but not enough to get them a win. Clearly, yeah. I don't know what I was thinking. You
I'm
can
curious
pile
about
on me for that.
broadcasting, though, Howard and Paul. You guys talked about trying to cover a losing team. It would seem, though, that a team could be so bad it could be entertaining, in the sense of, Paul and I talked about this on one of the shows where there was a Monday Night Football game with the Cowboys. They lost to the St. Louis Cardinals 38-0 on one of the first years of Monday Night Football, and the ratings actually went up because, obviously you had personalities in the TV broadcast who were so damn entertaining. But can't that actually create a platform to be, I don't know, different or entertaining?
You got to be careful because owners get very sensitive. General managers get very sensitive, and I'm not saying that you have to be the ultimate homer, but there's a way to do. I'll give you a case in point. I'm doing the Celtics during the ill-fated Rick Pitino era, and they were bad, but not Jets bad or even Dallas Cowboys bad this year. They were bad, and we're on the road doing a game, and Pitino had a player named Ron Mercer. In his first year, he played for him at Kentucky as well, and he comes down on a 1-on-3 fast break in a meaningful part of the game and launches a 3. And I said, I don't believe that Mercer would pass the salt at Thanksgiving dinner. And Pitino sees me a couple of days later on the road, calls my room and says, got time for some coffee? And I said, I'm probably going to pay for this now. We sit down and he says, I got a complaint. And I said, what's the complaint? Well, what you said the other night about Mercer not passing the salt at Thanksgiving dinner. And he's laughing while he's saying this to me. He said, Jimmy O'Brien, his assistant coach, his wife complained that she thought that was rude. And I said, Coach, am I wrong? He says, no. Just try to say it a different way. With that, he said, I got to tell you, I laughed when I heard about it, but I understand. I got to placate coaches' wives too.
See, now that's ridiculous to me. Patino should never have even come to you with that. I worked many, many years ago in the first decade of my radio career. I was working in Hartford and I was doing morning radio and being pretty successful at the time. And one morning, the program director, Dan, walks into the studio. I was on from 5:30 to 10 a.m. He walks into the studio at 9 o'clock when he usually came to work, but he never came to the studio while I was on the air. He walks in, opens the door, and with a stern look on his face says, I need to see you when you get off the air. Okay, that didn't sound good, but I still have to do another hour of radio. Okay, fine. I do that. At 10 o'clock, I go to the bathroom, right? Isn't that the first thing you do when you get off the air? You go to the bathroom. And then I walked into his office and I sat down on the couch and I said, what's up? He said, I haven't gotten a complaint about you in 2 weeks. Do something about that.
That's very good.
That was great because he got complaints about me, but I never heard about them. And the fact that Patino thought he had to take the assistant coach's wife's complaint and talk to you face to face, that's terrible.
Well, you got to understand the situation. Rick is the one who hired me. When he was coaching the Knicks, I was doing the Nets, so our paths crossed several times. So when the Celtic job came open, the people at I think it was Intercom Radio at the time, they went on a search, and I was doing the Milwaukee Bucks, but I left to get close to them. We had a newborn grandson, and I wanted to be closer in the East. And so I get a call from a guy who says that we're interested in having you talk to us about the Celtic job. And I said, really? Okay. Celtics, very well-known franchise, even though they were in rebuilding and so on. Patino's coming in. They had high draft picks. They thought they were going to get Tim Duncan. It didn't work out. You get into a situation sometimes where if you're concerned about the audience, particularly management, is saying, then you shouldn't be in that job, because I don't want to I don't like working for a team. I'd rather work for the station or the network.
Yeah. Smart.
All right. Well, guys, as a media guy, I could listen to these stories all night long. I absolutely love this stuff. And I don't want to corral this conversation, but we do have to talk about some football.
Okay, before you get to
By the
football,
way,
can I
go
just
ahead
add
and-
one other thing?
Please.
Let me just add one other thing, because you asked about doing bad teams
Yeah.
and doing them in an entertaining way.
Yeah.
To me, the greatest of all time of that was in the late 80s when John Miller was the voice of the Baltimore Orioles, and they started the season 0-33.
Yeah.
They were horrible. Cal Sr. was the manager at the time, and Cal Jr. was on the team, but they were absolutely terrible. And Howard could tell you, doing 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 bad games, okay. By the time you get to the second month and you still haven't won a game, it was unbelievable. But Miller, great storyteller, he would just start doing the game in different voices. He did so many impressions.
Yeah, well, no, John Miller was a terrific broadcaster. I mean, one of the best.
I mean, you might
That's
tune
great.
into an Orioles game, where they were down to like their 20th or 21st loss. You tuned in, and now Vin Scully is doing the game. No, it's Miller doing Scully. What he's just doing is to keep himself entertained
funny.
because it was so bad.
Hey, I got to ask you, Matt, is that a Garoppolo jersey you're wearing?
It is a Garoppolo jersey.
Seriously?
All right.
I thought it was Eli Manning until I saw the 49ers right above the number.
Matt, tell a quick story about why you're wearing that jersey. Tell the quick
story. The year that he debuted for the 49ers, I had the 49ers for big money, over 4.5 wins, and they started the season 0-10. And they plugged Garoppolo in. And I said, if he wins this, I am running out and getting a jersey for myself. I bought 2 for 2 of my friends also. And he sure enough, he won 6 in a row, 6-10. I don't give a shit what he does for the rest of his career. He's my MVP for that. I don't care. So he gets the jersey right now.
All right. Well, this shirt was on sale at Dollar City. That's the reason I'm wearing this. So
You overpaid.
But I thought you stole it from Kurt Warner.
That's right.
That's not the Kurt Warner era. That's the bad Rams era.
All right, so let's talk about the biggest surprises. We talked about the NFC East. We'll get to the bad in a minute. We'll get to the bad, really bad in a moment. But let's talk about the good, meaning surprise. Wow, look at that. What a surprise that was. Biggest surprises. You can take 1 or 2 of these. You talk about teams, players, whatever you want. Matt Lessinger.
Pittsburgh is the obvious choice. I mean, I told you earlier I thought they would have a good year. But they just went through a really tough 4-game stretch. I mean, I even count Dallas as tough because that was their 3rd straight game on the road. And they found a way to win that, and they won at Tennessee and at Baltimore. I don't think anybody saw them being this good at this point. So, all the credit to them. The other surprise to me is New Orleans. They just keep finding a way to win. I mean, they started out 1-2, and you thought maybe this is the end of the Drew Brees era. And now all of a sudden they've won 5 in a row. They're 6-2. It's like, where the heck did that come from? I mean, they still have a pretty tough schedule left, but those are my 2 surprises for now.
Go ahead, Paul.
I would agree with you on New Orleans, who I think we're probably going to talk about a little bit more later on when Nolan gets around to our division choices. But I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins, who I thought were pretty strong with Fitzpatrick. And pulling him and putting Tua in seemed like a pretty risky proposition to me. But boy, has it paid off. And not only has their offense responded, their defense has responded well. And, I don't think anybody chose them to be a wild card team this year. And, of course, there are going to be 7 teams instead of 6. So they're almost definitely going to get in there. But if they can keep playing as consistently well as they have, I think they're a force to be reckoned with.
You may see 8 teams, not 7. They're still talking about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're still talking about it. But I would agree with you about Miami. And you're right. Their defense, they added Byron Jones, paid him a lot of money. Kyle Van Noy from the Patriots, Shaq Lawson. They beefed up that defense. And Brian Flores is doing a heck of a job with his team. And everybody's talking now about Tua Tagovailoa. Hey, no applause. I just pronounced Tagovailoa right. No, I mean, everybody said they tanked for Tua. They tanked for Tua, and all. I don't know if they did. I don't know if they didn't. Whatever. The fact of it is, the kid has won 2 games. The first game he played, he was not the reason why they won. They won, but last week against a good Arizona team, they did a heck of a job. I think they were one of the surprises. I was talking to, and I'm not name dropping, promise you. I'm talking to Bill Parcells 3 or 4 days ago. And I've known Bill since he was a defensive coordinator with the Giants in like '82 when Ray Perkins was coaching. And he said the most complete team in the NFL right now is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I couldn't argue. He said the Seattle defense is not good. The Kansas City secondary is not good. They may very well go to the Super Bowl. But he thinks Pittsburgh is the most complete team. And in the NFC, I would say New Orleans is the most complete team. I mean, anybody take a look at their weapons, aside from Breeze and Kamara, and they got Mike Thomas back now. And how about Taysom Hill? I mean, this guy's got so many ways he can beat you with his arm or with his legs. They're complete, and Peyton's one of the best coaches in the game.
I agree.
All right, real good. Well,
what do you think, Nolan?
Well, I don't know if I guess the Steelers obviously is that choice of being especially undefeated. I would think that's just the obvious choice. It's you just wonder though. You got Baltimore on their heels. Kansas City is obviously right there, and you in a neutral field. I still think Kansas City probably would be favored versus the Steelers, even though the Steelers have a better record. So I think that's the big thing is let's see what happens, later in the season. There's some criticism about the Steelers also playing a so-called easy schedule, but they've somewhat deflated that by some of the things you guys talked about earlier. I would say watch out for the Tennessee Titans. That's just a team that's just built solid. And when you have a running game and with somebody with the caliber of just power and offensive line of Henry, who's able to churn out 160 yards on any given day, he could put in an all-star performance. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. And you've got a proven winner in Tannehill and the coach. That's a very underrated team. They still don't seem to get a lot of respect in the AFC. So I noticed when last season they so-called overperformed, and then they were 8.5 on the win total this season. And I said, did anybody watch the last 10 games of the season with the Titans last year? This team is solid. They were as good, right with Baltimore, right there, not quite with Kansas City. So I think that the Tennessee Titans are proving once again to be a team. The AFC is just loaded. I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and the balance of power is the AFC. There's no question about it. If you had to rank the top 14 teams in the NFL, you'd have 8 AFC, 6 NFC, because as Paul brought up before, that NFC East is just dreadful. But keep this in mind. You remember when Tennessee went into New England last year in the playoffs and beat the Patriots? Was that the beginning of the end for the Patriots or what?
Yeah, maybe so. Well, let's talk about the surprises bad now. And we've already talked about that a little bit. Let's get into that. The biggest bad surprise or disappointment, I guess that's the word I'm looking for, Matt Lessinger.
Do I even have to say the Jets? I mean, are we just like beating them up while they're down? Or
because the Jets were forecasted 6 games, is that the reason you're making them your?
And I took them over 6 wins. I mean, I really thought they looked good at the end of last year. Buffalo. We left out Buffalo as an overachieving team, but I mean, I really thought the AFC East was on the decline in general, and I thought they could. I didn't think they were going to win the division, but I thought they could be competitive and surprise some people. Anyway, they're a mess. They're a hot mess. But besides them, let's put it this way: only one team has ever started 0-4 and made the playoffs. That was, I think, the '92 Chargers. Now, with this expanded playoffs, you got an 0-5 team. Do you know where I'm going? The Atlanta Falcons. Oh, they could surprise some people. They were a ridiculous disappointment at the beginning of They are so much better than their record. Like, they're 3-6 right now. They are a way better team than that. So I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs necessarily, but they've been a huge disappointment. And they're another one that's got a tough schedule. But they're on a bit of a roll right now, and if they keep it going, they could surprise.
Yeah, but the Falcons I think there's a mental problem there because they keep giving games away, and it happened too often, too soon in the season, and that sort of thing. If you don't have a great coach, that sort of stuff can get into the skin of the players, and it's hard to shake that off. So I was going to say the Falcons, but my 1A choice there would be the Houston Texans. I don't know how a team with Deshaun Watson can be this bad. It's a leftover from Bill O'Brien's coaching.
He's not there.
No, but I know, but I mean, this is a team that went from Deshaun Watson to, what are they, 2-6 now?
Yep.
And you know, the Bill O'Brien's coaching legacy there is this team right here, because he couldn't keep it together, and I expected them to do much better than they are now.
Bill O'Brien made a catastrophic mistake last year in the playoffs against Kansas City, up 24-0, and he elects to go for it on 4th down from his side of the 50. An absolutely moronic decision. Not questionable, moronic. You punt the ball there, and so Kansas City turned that into a score, and you saw what they did the rest of the way. Now Bill O'Brien's got general manager's responsibilities in addition to being the head coach. The general manager, Bill O'Brien, betrayed the head coach, Bill O'Brien, by trading DeAndre Watson. And they said, well, they couldn't afford to pay him. You got to find a way. I don't care if you give up your firstborn. You don't trade DeAndre Watson. It's stupid. So that was the beginning of the end for them. I'm going to give you my team that's shocking the world, and they were picked to win a division. And that's the Dallas Cowboys. You ever see a defense worse than that? And don't give me the Jets, because they got other problems. The Dallas Cowboys defense is a sieve. It's embarrassing. This is a team, and not only that, their offensive line used to be their calling card. It's not now. You know, and look at their receivers. I mean, they got good receivers, and Ezekiel Elliott, who's having a pedestrian-like season. So, I mean, they're a disappointment in my mind.
Yeah, good answer. I certainly agree. And you could extrapolate that, as we've said, to the entire NFC East, which we touched on. I would say the Philadelphia Eagles. I would put them in there in this discussion as well, because this is a team that, keep in mind, 3 years ago, this team beat Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. And 60% of the personnel is still in place, including the quarterback. Now, they got rid of Foles, who led them there, one in an injury fill-in role. But that team, now they've had injury prone all last season. They started out with some injuries, but everybody has injuries. And for this team to perform so poorly in key games, and they're in first place, by the way, so I'm knocking a first place team. And you guys have, I think one of you said that the Eagles will probably win the division. Yeah, by default. But that team should be much better than it is, and it's also stinking it up. And which leads to my next question. How much of this is just upsetting the schedule? We didn't have training camps, everything, a big monkey wrench thrown into the routine of being an NFL coaching staff, players, so forth and so on. How much of it is just the aberration of this season, what we're seeing so far? What do you think, Matt?
Nolan, before Matt answers, I just want to jump in and add this. The NFL always talks about parity. More than any other sports league, they talk about how we have parity. Well, this year they do have parity. They got 16 teams above 500 and 16 teams below 500. What happened with the 16 teams above 500? Did they have a secret training camp? Did they do something special that the other teams weren't allowed to do? Or are they just better teams and better coaches and better players?
God, you sound like a political discussion. The election was rigged for the president, but not for the senators and the congressmen. Really? Hello?
That was a punch below the belt. This is your first warning, Mr.
Matt, I'm sorry I jumped in there on you, but
please. No, I don't have any great insight. I'm with you. I mean, everybody's on equal footing unless, if you're one of the teams that had to take a week or two off because of, some positive tests. That's the only argument. But who are those teams, right? I mean, Tennessee had to take a week off. It didn't seem to slow them down. Who else? New England? I mean, they sucked anyway. I don't know if there were any other teams that were like really directly affected by COVID, but no, otherwise everybody's on equal footing. So like you said, there's just better teams, better coaches, better players. No excuses. That's how I would say. How about you, Howard?
I think it's affected some teams more than others, but I don't think there's you tar everybody with the same brush. You can't do that. It's not right. But it clearly has had an impact, and I'm gonna be interested. The league was talking about well, a number of things. The league was talking about adding a eighth team to each conference in the postseason. I'll be interested to see if they do that. I think they're basing it if the NFL doesn't finish the season because of the COVID. I think that there was that one little asterisk next to that discussion. But you're right. I mean, it's like the NBA when they were playing in the bubble. I mean, everybody's playing under the same conditions. So did anybody have home court advantage? Obviously not.
It's like when it rains at the racetrack; they all have to run in the mud. You know.
Yeah.
I am curious. I am curious about one thing, Howard. I can't believe that I'm asking this naive question, but I'll ask it. When is a decision made on how many playoff teams are going to be? They're going to be, and was that purely a COVID-based decision because they were worried that maybe one of the teams just entirely has to leave the field to play? Is that the reason for this?
Yeah, I talked to Adam Schefter about that, and he talked about it this morning on what's that show that Greenberg hosts, Get Up, on ESPN in the morning. I think he mentioned it this morning, and I talked to Adam this afternoon, and he said it's not been a firm decision. They're talking about it, and it's going to be because of the COVID.
Okay, but if that happens, if the NFL, let's say the NFL for some reason can't play one weekend, none of the teams can play. Just take that week and put it at the end. You can move the Super Bowl back. It's not like you're going to have 70,000 fans flying to the Super Bowl this year, but you own the stadiums. Just move everything back a week.
Hey, they'll figure it out. But I'll throw this out to the panel. I think, my opinion, Adam Silver is the most effective commissioner in sports. Roger Goodell has had his potholes that he's fell into. Gary Bettman has had his potholes. Major League Baseball's commissioner has had his potholes. But through it all, Adam Silver continues to dance above the fray, in my opinion.
I'd like
I
to
share
pick
that
up on
opinion.
that. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
real. Did you notice that Adam Silver acted so swiftly, and it obviously hit right there in the middle of the season? Now, especially you, Howard, you probably know Gary Bettman, and you know Silver, and you know Goodell, these people firsthand. So I defer to your expertise. But from a fan standpoint, Adam Silver has always looked forward. When he took the NBA commissioner's job, those of us in Las Vegas, we saw somebody that saw the future. And he was one of the first people to really openly embrace a fact that we all know that people bet on these games. And not only did he take that and run with it, he actually understood that we have to have some mechanisms to protect the integrity of the game. So I really like everything that Adam Silver has done, whereas for so many years the NFL and even Goodell, Paul Tagliabue before that, and certainly Pete Rozelle before that, were very anti-gambling. And again, it was about protecting the shield. You know, that term. Major League Baseball, a complete clusterfuck in terms of leadership and organization. But you're absolutely right that Adam Silver is just a pioneer when it comes to leading sports leagues. And I've never seen anybody that I think has been more effective, especially since he's only been in place for like 5 or 6 seasons.
Yeah, well, who did he learn from? He learned from David Stern. That's a pretty good mentor. Look, and I just went blank. I forgot the Major League Commissioner's name. Baseball. Baseball commissioner. Baseball. I went blank. You guys can't help me out here.
Isn't that embarrassing? It's
Is
funny.
that Manfred?
Yeah, Rob Manfred.
Thank you.
But Rob Manfred, I mean, I had a run-in when I was doing the Bucks. I had a run-in with the commissioner of baseball, Bud Selig. He lived in Milwaukee, and he was a good friend, close friend, boyhood friend of Herb Cole, who owned the Bucks. They asked me to come on a talk show before a Bucks game one night on WTMJ in Milwaukee, and I took a shot at baseball, and I said Jackie Robinson is rolling over in his grave. Bud Selig was listening and calls into the radio station. And they asked me if I had a problem talking to Bud Selig. I said, no, bring him on. And he said, he took offense. And I said, well, with all due respect, Mr. Commissioner, you can take offense. But what's going on in Major League Baseball now is not good. And he says, well, what do you mean? You got two different rules. DH in one league, no DH in the other. You're using the All-Star game as the team that wins the league that wins the All-Star game gets home field advantage in the World Series. How does that make any sense to you? And he gave me some crapola, and the next day Herb called, the owner of the team called me, the senator, and he asked me if I would sit down and have lunch with Bud Selig and him, and I said sure. We went and had lunch, and he went right after me, and I said, I'm not listening to this because you just don't want to see what's right in front of your eyes. And it's still the same way. Seriously? Does that make any sense to anybody? Any one of you guys?
And that's how Silver is different. He can adapt to what the new situation is. Look at what he did with Black Lives Matter this season.
Yeah.
He recognized that, 80% of his workforce is black, and they all have feelings about this. And when the players said they don't want to play, there was no lightning bolt that came down from the commissioner's office to smite these players for not doing what they were told. He said, you know what? We're going to figure this out and we're going to handle this right. And they did. They didn't solve racism, but they certainly made their players and their fans feel better about them. And that's kind of what you have to do when you're the commissioner of any sport, isn't it?
Well, here's the one thing, and I think Silver will deal with it. First of all, the Rooney Rule in football is a joke. We all know that.
Real quick, what's the Rooney Rule, Howard?
In the NFL, where they have to interview a minority candidate for a job, for a head coaching job. Well, the NBA is 80% black. There's 8 head coaches in the NBA that are black. There's 30 teams.
Yeah.
I had Butch Beard, who played in the league, coached in the league, and he was on my podcast the other day. And Butch is right. He said that not only is there not enough black head coaches, there's virtually no black general managers in the NBA. And look, I hear what they're saying, and I'm not black, but I grew up in Brooklyn where we didn't care. I grew up on Argyle Road in Brooklyn across from the parade grounds, and the only thing we cared about was a ball. Could you play? I didn't care if you were white, black, green, Puerto Rican, Italian, Irish, Jewish, didn't matter. As long as you could play. And so I have an understanding of where the black argument is. I don't walk in their shoes, but I do know what the lane is they're walking on.
Howard, let me ask you. Go ahead.
It's not just in the front office; it's in the broadcast booth too.
Yeah.
Fair point. Cedric Maxwell, my old partner in Boston, he's the only black broadcaster in Boston.
Howard, let me ask you a follow-up, and I'll take it around because I know we will all have opinions on this. Didn't really think about it until you brought up this issue about the racial strife and obviously the protests and so forth that we saw a few months ago. A lot of people, a lot of football fans, probably some people watching this show were on that train that said, I'm going to boycott the NFL. They saw the first week and then the so-called Black National Anthem, and there was a lot of resistance to that, upset a lot of people. Now, I understand our politics here, but let's talk about this from a business standpoint. What are the owners seeing? What are they saying? How certainly Silver in basketball handled this situation well, but also their ratings tanked, and that's got to be a concern. And I wonder what's the implication of that going to be. Now let's talk the NFL. We got over this, and it looks like we don't have the Kaepernick issue. Which, by the way, real quick sidebar: how in the fuck can Colin Kaepernick not be on a roster at this point? Hello. All right, sorry, I had to do that for a second. But so talk about the so-called boy be completely non-existent now, and how the NFL and fans have reacted to all of this hoopla that's been going on all summer.
Well, you can't discuss Kaepernick now because the issue's dead.
Sure.
But when Roger Goodell said this past year that he thinks that Kaepernick deserves a chance, and I went, where have you been for the last 3 years? Now you're standing up for him? Really? We don't know if he's in any kind. He may be in good physical shape, but he's not in football shape. And there, as you well know, is a big distinction. So where was Goodell? And that's the reason why I think that he's dropped the ball. But then again, who does he work for? He works for the owners.
I just picture a scenario at the Kaepernick house. Honey, the New York Jets are on the phone. I'm not here. Not.
Very good.
We got our 10-second soundbite right there.
And the other thing I would say about this is when it comes to matters like this, you should always go ask Jerry Jones his opinion and then do the opposite.
Well, Jerry Jones, I met Jerry one time in my entire NFL career. I met him on the field before a game when Wade Phillips was the head coach of the Cowboys. And I like Wade a lot. And we're talking there, and Jerry comes over, and Wade says, Jerry, do you know Howard David? He goes, no, I know your name, but we've never met. And I said, I got to ask you. He says, ask. I said, you have your critics. You know who your critics are. How do you respond? And he gave me a Jerry Jones answer. It went from January 1st to February 14th. It went on forever. And he walks away, and later on, my partner was Matt Mellon on Monday Night Football, and Matt and I are standing on the field talking, and Jerry knew Matt. And he came over and said hello, and Matt said, Jerry, you know Howard David? He goes, yeah. He said, we met before. He asked me a question, and I gave him a book, meaning a very long answer. Look, you can't, there's no such thing as a billionaire who's an idiot. There is no such thing. But the difference is that when you run a business, a conventional business, whatever it is, your friends don't ask you about that business. When you own a sports franchise, every friend you know is asking you about that franchise. Hey, Jerry, what are you going to do about your quarterback? Hey, Jerry, what are you going to do about your wide receiver? And so for the first time, when he bought the Cowboys, let's face it, he bought a pretty good reputation. And so let's keep this in mind. He hadn't been to the Super Bowl since 1995. That sticks in Jerry's craw. Mark it down.
Matt, anything to add?
No, I was just going to add one thing about Adam Silver. I mean, I agree with everybody's opinion that he is far and away the best commissioner. I mean, his COVID response was on point also. Like, if he didn't take the lead and shut down the NBA, who would have? Right? We might have gone another week or two before anything got shut down. And as bad as COVID has been, that first wave in March and April could have been a lot worse. And he gets more credit than any politician. I mean, he shut down $1 billion business voluntarily because he knew it was the right thing to do. And then everybody else had to follow suit once he did it. So, I mean, I think history will give him a lot more credit than maybe he's getting at this very moment. Looking back at the timeline of the COVID response, I mean, good for him. That's on top of everything else he's done well. I think that's at the top of the list.
Yeah, great roundtable discussion. Matt Lessinger, my co-host here on An Intelligent Conversation. It certainly is. Let's move on to football and talk about the MVP. Your MVP, most valuable player for the first 8 or 9 games of the season. We're at the midway point of the 2020 season. Your MVP. And then if you want to, this is your like 1 and 1A, like a horse race coupling. Say who that you really, really think is, there's the popular answer, and then there's the maybe sometimes you have but I really think this one. Who wants to take that one first?
I'll go ahead. I mean, I think I'd prefer to go with a less obvious answer because I think we know who the obvious ones are. To me, Kyler Murray is up there. I mean, the Cardinals stand a pretty good chance of winning that division, or at least they're right in the mix. And he's such a huge part of that. I mean, I know he's probably not going to win MVP, but it obviously a lot depends on how the second half of the year goes. But just watching him play, he's so dynamic, and so there's times when he's really carrying that team on his shoulders. I mean, somebody like Mahomes and Russell Wilson, I mean, they're amazing. They've got more weapons, though. I mean, I understand he's got Hopkins or whatever, but I mean, Kyler Murray does so much more with his feet. I think I read something that he would rank like eighth or ninth in rushing in the league, like even counting running backs. I think he's in the top 10 in the league in rushing. So that's all. Just I think he's come out of nowhere to really take that spot for me.
Tell you who I would choose. I'll tell you who I would choose as the most valuable player on a team that can't do anything even though he's there. And that is Dalvin Cook of the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every couple of years we see what I call the new Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic running back. His team will never win anything. And this year that's Dalvin Cook. He is a human highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
He's remarkable. But if we're looking at players who have the most impact, I think you might have to do a field entry for three guys from the New Orleans Saints. You know, you got Breeze, you got Kamara, and you got Taysom Hill, who Howard mentioned earlier, who I think, you know, we haven't seen a versatile player like this in a long time. You know, I mean, we all can go back and remember Slash because he could do multiple things on the field. This guy does more than him. So I'm going to take those three, but I realize it's a field entry. It's not just one.
If Kamara wins the MVP, and I'm not saying he won't, it depends on what happens the rest of the year, he would be the first non-quarterback since Adrian Peterson in 2012 to win an MVP. And I'm not taking him out of the discussion yet. Patrick Mahomes has got the wow vote, and that means every time you watch him, you go, wow. Because he does something. When he threw a pass behind his back, I thought it was Magic Johnson playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. My God. I mean, this guy does things. I am so impressed with him and his poise at such a young age. Right now, I'd say he was 2 weeks ago, I said him or Russell Wilson, but Russell had, his last game against Buffalo was a disaster. He had a really bad game. That hurt him. I think Seattle still wins the NFC West, but I'm going to go with the chalk. I'm going to say it's Patrick Mahomes. He's just incredible what he's able to do, and he's got weapons. Yes, he's got probably the best tight end in the league. He's got Hill. He's got weapons, but their defense scares me, particularly their secondary. And I think it gets to a point where Kansas City is just going to outscore you, and that's the way they win.
Yeah. My pick will be a little bit of a surprise. I think Russell Wilson was that universal, you know, how can you argue against Russell Wilson single-handedly almost, with his feet, with his arm, with his leadership, with his presence on the field, always keeping the Seahawks in the game with a very, very bad defense. That Seahawks team has really overachieved. They overachieved last season too because of Russell Wilson. So obviously we could throw in, you know, Lamar Jackson into this thing. Who's the best player in the NFL? And obviously Mahomes is in this discussion. However, nobody's brought up this one. How about Big Ben? That's an undefeated football team. And I don't know how you can't look at the leader of this team, and a Hall of Fame caliber player, probably playing his last season or two in the twilight of his career, and he's undefeated at, what is it, 9-0 or 8-0 or 9-0? I mean, I don't know how you can't put Ben Roethlisberger in this discussion. So, and real quick sidebar on Ben. I've never been really a Steeler fan or a Big Ben fan, although I've certainly admired his play. I watch all the games, but I watched particularly this last week when the Steelers were down to a clearly inferior Dallas Cowboy team. And I was watching, you just watch a player when they go into the huddle and you're seeing how they're reacting, how they're leading. They're leading. Football is not about statistics. And a lot of the statistics you see with these guys who throw it for 400 yards, a lot of it's trash yardage, a lot of flashy. Roethlisberger's not your quarterback to get all the stats. But I'll tell you what, when you need to get that first down or you need to get that touchdown with 3 minutes left in the game, Big Ben is the guy I probably want quarterbacking my football team. So that's my answer, is Big Ben.
Hey, let me ask one question before everybody goes. Let me ask one question. What's the most absurd scene you watch week in and week out in the NFL?
Absurd scene, you said?
Yeah, you see the same thing every week.
Give us an example of what you're talking about, Howard.
I'll give you the answer. The answer is it's Adam Gase, and Adam Gase, who's obviously has got the worst team in the NFL. Can somebody tell me what the hell he's looking at on those cards on the sideline? What the hell are you looking at? Your team is the lowest scoring team in the league. Don't you think it's time for you to roll that card up and stick it where the sun don't shine? I mean, are you kidding me?
We can fall that under things that broadcasters always wanted to say on the air but couldn't during a game.
I said that to Marty Lyons today, but in a different way, because Marty and I go back a long way. I've been involved with Marty's foundation for like 30 years. I said, Marty, you got to tell me what Adam Gase is looking at on that card. I mean, the rotational plays is simple: run inside, throw to the side, punt. Run inside, throw to the side, punt. I mean, it's like the Rockettes. It's like choreographed. So, would you mind telling me what the hell he's looking at on that card?
Join us
Unless it's porn, I got a problem with it.
Join us next week here on Intelligent Conversation when you get Howard's rants.
I mean, really?
Oh. All right, so we're going to do this, gentlemen. We've got another 10 minutes or so. We're going to wrap it up this way. We're going to kind of combine everything at the end. Give us kind of any surprise teams you have. You're going to give us your Super Bowl competitors and also the Super Bowl winner. You're going to give us just kind of an overview of what you think the rest of the season is going to play out like. But here's a quick curveball for you. You don't expect this question coming. What's the thing in the NFL that drives you crazy? The rule, the thing that we see every week, the thing that's on television? What is the thing that just drives you crazy when you watch football? Anybody? I've got mine, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is it?
All right, mine is this. I hate the forward progress rule. My wine glass is the football, right? I'm standing at the 2-yard line and I stick the ball out, and they do this all the time, and a fair amount of the time the ball is knocked out. Like, just fall down at the 1, please. And you've got first and goal at the 1. But everybody's got to stick the ball out to the end zone, and they get sometimes a score, sometimes they don't. But why would you risk sticking the ball out like that, and they're standing and laying on the 2-yard line, and they're given a touchdown? The game is called football. Football. You've got to be in the end zone. You have to physically be touching the grass. I cannot stand what I call air touchdowns, sticking the ball across the invisible plane. And so nobody in the stadium knows, nobody that watches the games knows until you watch the instant replay. You got to freeze the camera. We should have real football where we do not have this craziness. We're sticking the ball out, and you're in a different zip code. You have to, when you score a touchdown, 7 points or 6 points, you should be having to stand in the end zone, or the ball should have to be across the line physically. That is the thing that drives me crazy.
You want it to be like rugby. You have to touch the ball to the ground.
Yes.
Touchdown.
Yes, hello. Thank you. That's fine. Now that I rambled for 2 minutes, you had time to think of your own answers.
There's two. The obvious one's the pass interference call. What is and what is not pass interference? And when the Giants, who are bad, obviously, but not as bad as the Jets, they went for 2 in a tie game. Was it the week before last?
Against Washington, or yeah?
Yes. No, they beat Washington. It was the game before that. I don't recall. But they had a chance to tie the game, and the 2-minute, the go for 2, there was question. It was called pass interference first, and then they had their little meeting, and the only thing they're missing at their meeting is hors d'oeuvres. But they sit there and they have their meeting, and then they come back and said, no, there was no flag. Well, I've seen worse. I've seen a lot worse that wasn't called, but to me, what bothers me more than anything else is how long these meetings are with the officials that take forever. And I'm saying, you guys got to come together a lot sooner than this.
I don't understand why the referee has to go over to the side to look under the hood at a monitor when you got 48 guys in New York. That's their job. They got a wall of these things. Put it on the big screen. 8 seconds, we can make a decision. Chris Collinsworth figured it out before the game started. Let's go. But that's not one of my 2. I'll tell you 2 things that drive me crazy about the NFL. I don't know how any kicker misses an extra point.
I'm with you. You got one job.
Yes. We're not talking about a 67-yard game winner. We're talking about the thing you practice more than anything else in your life. If you have more than one extra point missed in the game, you're off the team. Terrible. And then the other thing comes down to two simple words: Troy Aikman.
Oh boy, here we go.
If you listen to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman do their game of the week on Fox, you will not hear anybody saying anything more obvious than what Troy Aikman tells you to. Well, yeah, when they run it to the right and they get a couple of yards and that's good enough for a first down, they're going to move the chains. Thank you, boy genius. You know, it's like when John Madden was in his latter years and told you that if you have to score a touchdown, you have to get it across the goal line. We understand that. This is not football for beginners. But Troy, I had friends over here to watch the Super Bowl this year, and it was Buck and Aikman doing it. And I told them, watch how many obvious things he does. And they were not aware of it. They were not passionate football watchers like I am. After the first quarter, they turned to me and they said, how does this guy have this job? He doesn't give us any insight whatsoever. You know, when you compare him to Collinsworth or some of the other great analysts who are doing the games now, Darrell Johnston and some of the others, many of whom, Howard, you probably worked with in the radio booth. How does Troy Aikman have this multi-million-dollar job? I don't get it.
Well, you might want to throw Tony Romo into the mix too. And look, we're in a subjective business. What you like, I don't. What I like, you don't, and so on. And it's been that way forever. But what bothers me is when you hear an analyst say, oh, this is close. No shit. It's close. We could see that. I mean, when they say this is going to be close, oh, fine. You've just given me the reason why you're making $10 million a year, just because you said this is close. And the other one that bothers me is when an analyst says, let me tell you what. And I go, what? What?
Yeah.
What? I guarantee you, you watch games this weekend. How many times you'll hear an analyst say, let me tell you what? And then you're going to go back, you're going to yell at your TV, and you're going to go, what?
Hey, Matt, before we go to you, I have to jump on to Paul for a moment because I got to tell you, I hope nobody's watching this show because Paul Harris has ruined my football watching experience from now on. About 2 months ago, we did a show. We were analyzing all the Monday Night Football broadcasters over the last 50 years. And Paul Harris brought up Troy Aikman. He brings this up to me. I never really thought about it. I always thought I'm from Dallas originally, so I'm not a huge Aikman fan, but the little bit of a connection there, I guess, as a fan, to the city and so forth. And I just always thought he was an average announcer. And then Paul said exactly what he said here. He said, Mr. Obvious. And now every time I watch a football game and Aikman is on there with Jack Buck, I'm like, holy shit, Paul was right. Paul was right. Paul was right. It's amazing. So you've completely shattered my NFL. Now I got to I got to put Howard David on the radio. Maybe that'll give me some more intelligence. So
if you saw Jack Buck, Nolan, you just saw somebody who's dead. You mean it's his son, Joe?
Oh, did I say Jack Buck? Excuse me, I meant Joe Buck.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. No, that's all right. Hey, look.
You talk about just real quick. You talk about Jack Buck, the greatest. This is Jack Buck. I'm here from Busch Stadium. I mean, that great voice. He had the greatest voice of all time. I do not like his son. Anyway.
Well, like I said at the beginning, it's subjective. You may like somebody that I don't. I mean, when I hear certain play-by-play guys, and I'm not going to mention any names because it doesn't serve me well to do that, but there are certain guys that I like. I happen to like Joe Buck. I like the job that he does. I like Kevin Burkhardt. Nobody talks about him very much with Fox, but Kevin does a heck of a good job.
Yep.
Very impressed with him. Iron Eagle does a damn good job.
Yes.
And for some reason they let Dan Fouts go and said, what the hell is wrong with you? Dan Fouts was terrific. I work with Dan Fouts. He's an excellent analyst, in my opinion.
He was. Of the people who you worked with in the booth, who do you remember as being the great analysts through those years?
Well, Matt Mellon. Hands down, Matt Mellon. Matt and I worked together for 6 years doing Monday nights. Pat Hayden and I worked together Sunday Night Football. And the one thing I'll say about Pat is that my vocabulary improved working with Pat because he's a Rhodes Scholar.
No.
So, but, I learned a lot from Pat because Pat would tell me that you don't try to shoehorn everything in to a broadcast. And I learned that from a guy named Merle Harmon who made the network late in his life. And Merle told me, prepare for everything, but if you used more than 20% of what you've prepared for, you've spoken way too much. And he was right. So I listen to the game with a different pair of ears than a lot of people, obviously.
By the way, Paul Harris, that's your line. Kind of over prepare for you were on the air almost every day for 40 years. And I remember you telling me that for every hour you were on the air, you prepared something like double or triple that time. Wasn't that correct, Paul?
Yeah. I walked into the studio with more notes than I ever had in any class I took in any school I went to. And Howard's absolutely right. If I used up everything, I blew it. I always walked out of there with stuff I didn't get to, but that's what you have to do. That's what preparation's about. And by the way, if you're over prepared, then when something happens that you weren't expecting, you can run with it.
Well, John Wooden said it the best. Preparing to fail, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And he was right. And so that's 80% of our job is done before we go in the booth.
Yep.
I just want to say it's been nice to meet you, Howard, and listening, without looking and just sort of listening to your voice. Now I'm like, oh, I recognize it. Like, I don't think I would have, associated before, but I'm like, oh, damn, that's a very distinctive announcer's voice, and it does ring a bell with.
Hey, Matt, we're gonna do a smell test in just a moment, so hang on there.
Okay, there we go. Stick your wine out. Let me get a.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
it's nice of you to say.
Sure. Just real quick, the thing that drove me nuts. You mentioned kickers missing extra points. I hate when a guy punts from midfield and can't keep it out of the end zone. Like, oh man, my leg is too strong. Like, put me in there to punt it. Then I guarantee you, I won't get it in the end zone. If that's your one job is punting, like you can't keep it out of the end zone. That's my rant. That's real quick.
Hey, Matt, and why they take a 5-yard penalty? Like they'll do that. You know what I mean by that?
Right.
They're midfield, and sometimes they'll take the 5.
Because my leg is too strong. It's too strong. I can't keep it out of the end zone. Can I ask you a quick question? Maybe a very quick around the horn. The play calling has been a lot more aggressive this year, right? And we're sort of old school. I think I could say that. So how do we feel about that? Like, are we cool with the, going with the mathematicians and saying, oh, they say two, we just scored the first touchdown of the game. Now we're going to go for 2. Like, is that trend going to stick, do you think? Or are they just overthinking it?
That's analytics. And that's the operative word now in today's sports vernacular. It's analytics. I don't know if I'm not against it. I'm not for it. I think you coach from the gut. That's just me. The analytics and the numbers don't show you what's going on the field. The coaches see what's going on in the field. And if he hasn't watched enough film over the week, what more is he going to learn from the analytics? I'm having a hard time putting my hands around that. But look, who are the most consistent teams year in and year out? Pittsburgh's in that conversation. Seattle has been in more recent years. They've been in that conversation. Kansas City is. You look at the coaches that are coaching now in the NFL. I don't know and I know that Arians coaches, with the analytics, and so does the guy in Kansas City. I guess you got to just go with what's new and what's more current. But I don't know how you feel about analytics. You tell me.
Paul, what do you think?
Well, I like seeing more teams going forward on 4th down. Although Andy Reid going in for 4th down is not the same as Bill O'Brien going for it on 4th down.
Yep.
There's a much higher percentage. So analytics mean something, but if you take league-wide analytics and you apply them to a bad team, they don't work.
Yeah,
teams have to look at what's worked for them in the past, and they know their personnel. And that coach has looked at film of the opponents as well as what his own guys can do, and they know, it's 4th and 3. Is this too far? If you have Patrick Mahomes or Russell Wilson on your side, probably not.
Let me ask everybody this question. Sunday night, New Orleans plays Tampa. Bill Belichick is watching the game in his office. Okay? He didn't play until Monday night. He's watching Tom Brady getting his ass kicked. Tell me he wasn't pump fisting.
Does he have that kind of emotion in him, Howard?
No, I don't know.
I don't know. You probably know him better than any.
No, he's different. Hey, Nolan, to be honest with you, I knew Belichick when he was in this defensive coordinator with the Jets, and I would see him in the weight room. Like I'd go into the weight room early in the morning and get on the treadmill, and he'd come in the same time I was in there. And any question I asked him, he would answer whatever he helped me prepare for games. He is different. He's a different guy now. I don't know what's happened to him. I think I don't expect him to see on Comedy Central anytime soon. But let's face it, if he's not the greatest coach of all time, you tell me who is.
That's
hard to argue.
I think the silence there speaks volumes on that one. All right, gentlemen, what a great show this has been. As a gambler, I used to hate these kind of questions, but I'm going to do it anyway. People would say, who do you like? This is when I used to really, bet quite a bit and was so heavily in watching the players and the teams and so forth and so on. Then I'd get this question, who do you think is going to be in the Super Bowl and who's going to be the Super Bowl winner and this and that. And I used to say, this is really crass. I don't care. I just want to have the right side. I mean, that's how disassociated you get sometimes from reality when you're gambling on the games. But I'm trying to take that hat off and get back into maybe enjoying the game a little more, which I've actually done this season. So I now have to throw it your way and ask you that question that just I think anybody watching wants to hear your feelings. And you're going to basically come up with the Super Bowl or anything about the rest of the 8 or 9 game season. Are we going to get there with 8 playoff teams in each conference? You can discuss that. Division winners, surprises. Give us a surprise team that'll run deep like Tennessee, the Titans did last season. Give us the team that's going to run deep. Give us the Super Bowl matchup and who wins. Who wants to take that first?
I'll go if nobody wants to jump in. I don't see anybody beating Kansas City. Just don't. They just no lead is safe with that team. We've seen that over and over and over again. Initially, I was saying I kind of had a thing for Tampa Bay, but man, I don't know if they were exposed the other night against New Orleans. But I'm going to take the Saints and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and I think it's going to be an entertaining game. And do I have a horse in the race? No, but I think Kansas City wins.
Nolan wants to see a game where he can make money. I just want to see a really great game between 2 great teams. I agree with Howard that Kansas City is in there, although I think Pittsburgh is right up there with them. I actually think it comes down to who gets the bye week, because only one team in each conference is going to get a bye week this year,
right,
if they have 7, and nobody gets a bye week if they have 8, right?
Right.
Yeah. So whoever gets the bye week, I think there in the AFC probably is your Super Bowl contender. And then, when the season started out and I watched the first few games, I thought it was going to be the Seattle Seahawks. But I looked this statistic up today, speaking of analytics. The Seattle defense, their offense has to score a lot of points because their defense gives up too many points.
Right.
Their differential this year is 31. They have 31 points more for them than the opponents have gotten. Just to compare that to other teams in the NFC. Green Bay, 49. New Orleans, 44. Tampa Bay, 47. Arizona, 54. And then you look at the AFC, Kansas City, 103. Kansas City can get down, 3 touchdowns and this game's not over. There's only 2 minutes left. Yeah, I know. It's still not over. It's the Chiefs and Mahomes. By the way, the New York Jets, minus 147. I'm not making that up.
Wow.
So, but I don't think the Seahawks can do it because of their defense and the problems that everybody's mentioned about that so far. And, Russell Wilson's great, but at a certain point, your D has to make a stop, give the offense a chance to rest up, and keep the other team from scoring the points. I think New Orleans has a complete team in that way. And so I'm going to take the Saints versus either the Steelers or the Chiefs.
I think that was a great point about the only one team getting a bye this year, because I think it is going to be 7 teams, and what a huge advantage that is. So from that standpoint, I think you have to favor the Steelers right now. And plus they've gotten through the toughest part of their schedule for the most part. That this was the stretch where they were supposed to lose a couple of games and they didn't. So, they might have a letdown game or two, but 15-1 or 14-2, they're going to get that bye if they can keep a record like that. The NFC is a lot more wide open. I'm kind of a homer, so I want to say like whoever wins the NFC West is going to make it. I think Seattle is the obvious pick. Arizona, despite losing last week, I just feel like they're constantly improving. Like Kyler Murray's getting better every week. His, chemistry with DeAndre Hopkins is going to get better. The defense is getting better. Like so they're my. I don't even want to say dark horse pick. Is a 5-3 team really a dark horse pick? I think they stand a pretty decent shot. Seattle. I'll throw this out there, even though this is my bonus pick, Nolan, because I know anybody that's followed Nolan for any length of time has heard of something called a teaser wheel, which if you're a complete degenerate, that still shouldn't even be in your vocabulary. But Nolan's got this thing called a teaser wheel where he likes to tease one team to literally every other team on the card. If you really have to do that, tease Seattle to +8 this week, because I think the Rams have been kind of exposed, and I don't think Seattle loses by more than a touchdown in a interdivision game.
Writing this down.
But don't do a teaser wheel. Do not. No, don't. Put like 4 teasers with 4 other teams. Don't do it with 31 other teams. Oh my God, like that's just, or 30 other teams. That just kills my sensibilities. But anyway, tease Seattle this week, maybe to Baltimore. I think they laying 7.5 against New England. Tease them down to 1.5. There's my teaser special for this week.
There we go.
Nolan, mark this down. Mark this down.
Yes.
Cincinnati is going to beat somebody before the season's over and really kill their playoff chances. This kid Burrow, he has shown me that, he's, how many 300-yard games has he had? 4 so far. He's going to hurt somebody. He's going to beat somebody and upset somebody and cost them big time before the season's over. I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm just telling you that you better watch this team when they play a team that's supposed to beat them.
One of the questions I wanted to get to, but we're out of time here, was which of the 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks has the brightest future here? And it's Tua and certainly Burrow at Cincinnati and the Chargers quarterback. The Chargers have not won games recently.
Herbert,
that's a whole brand new team now. With that is a leader on the field. You can tell that. So anyway, here's my final. My final summation. I'll pick a team that we haven't heard this team yet. How about the Green Bay Packers? Remember them? Aren't they like in first place? And anybody know this guy named Aaron Rodgers? I'm going to say the Packers because the Saints. I am a Saints fan. Howard David gave me New Orleans Saints tickets. I sat next to him in the broadcast booth in the Superdome one year. Howard David. So thank you, Howard, for those tickets. The Saints just crumble in playoff time. There's some monkey on the back of this team. I don't know what it is. They could do a whole show on that, and they do that in New Orleans. But the Packers, I think, are a team that they're just something about this team. I think they can surprise both Seattle and New Orleans, and obviously the NFC East. You just can throw that entire division out. So I'm going to say the Packers is a surprise in the NFC, and the AFC. I have no idea. Baltimore, Kansas City, Pittsburgh. Who knows? Tennessee, though, is the team that I, as a gambler, like because they're fundamentally solid. They're going to be dogs in at least one, if not 2, of the playoff games in the AFC. And I think this is the team capable of surprising a few people, the Tennessee Titans. So
I'm going to tell you that the quarterback.
One more time around the horn.
Yeah, I'm going to just say the quarterback I admire the most, Ryan Tannehill. You ever see his wife?
No.
She is spectacularly beautiful.
Wow. I got to go look this up now.
He's an NFL quarterback, Howard. Why is that a surprise?
I know, but until he left Miami, no one even knew anything more than his wife was beautiful. Now he could play. So, he's got it all. Hey, before I leave here, Nolan, get me to Las Vegas, man. I want to work there.
Listen, man, we're going to try to get you on that Raiders gig. We didn't even mention the Raiders. Hey, guys, I'll tell you what. I'll make you this deal. Will you come back in on? We do another show maybe before the playoffs. How's that? What a panel! And I could just listen to broadcast stories all night long. You agree with me, Matt?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Some great stories, guys.
Yeah, so it's fun. Always good talking to you, Nolan, and nice meeting you guys for the first time.
Absolutely. And by the way, thank you for the tip. I just looked at Lauren Tannehill. You're right.
Am I lying or what?
No, you're right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
With this all-male panel, everybody's going to go to Google immediately and Google that name. On behalf of Matt Lessinger, my partner in crime here on An Intelligent Conversation. This is our 9th show. You who watch us every week, honor us with your time. Thank you for coming on. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to Matt. And we always try to tackle a new topic every week. We've done a lot of serious stuff. We wanted to have some fun. I think we had a lot of fun, and I learned a hell of a lot. Let's come back next week and try something new. Thanks again to our guest, Howard David, the great Howard David, and Paul Harris and Matt Lessinger. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time on An Intelligent Conversation.
Hey, Nolan, by the way, nice do-rag.
I had my motorcycle earlier, so I was out riding, man. Born to be wild. That's the end of my singing career. Good night, gentlemen. Thank you so much. See you.